When it comes to our world, we tend to remember moments of disaster or struggle more than we do times of peace and happiness. And to that end, the events of the Chernobyl disaster still loom large on our world today, to the extent that various documentaries, miniseries, and more are still being made about it despite it happening decades ago. But if you were going to go there to see the damage for yourself, what would you find? What would be awaiting you in this very eerie ground? Allow us to show you the 8 most insane places of Chernobyl. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 8. Lernie Swimming Pool. It may seem odd to start out an insane places list with a swimming pool, but trust us when we say that this is much more than what it appears. You see, this pool is found within the city of Pripyat. That name will ring familiar to many who know the Chernobyl disaster, as it was the main place evacuated after the disaster started because of its exposure to the radiation. To this day, the overall city of Pripyat is abandoned because of the remaining radiation. As a result, it has been overgrown by plant life and has even become a forest in some ways. So where does the Lernie swimming pool fit into all this? Ironically, it was once dubbed one of the cleanest places in the exclusion zone, or the place where it was honestly safe to go. For 12 years after the disaster, the swimming pool was the resting spot for the workers who were trying to clean up the plant. They could go and swim because the radiation levels weren't bad there, and they would cleanse and relax after a hard day's work. After certain steps in the cleanup process were done, the pool was abandoned and now stands as a reminder of all that was lost. Though, ironically, it's famous enough to have been put into movies and even video games. Not bad for a pool, huh? Number 7. The Cooling Pond. While the last body of water we showed you was important because of what it did for the human population, this next body of water is one that was very much a danger zone for all who came across it until very recently. There's a lot of work that goes into making a nuclear reactor, and one of the key processes is making a cooling pond to make sure that the reactor both doesn't overheat and can be flooded with water should something go wrong. The cooling pond for Chernobyl was well over the size of 3,000 football fields, because of the 4 reactors it had to help cool. As a result, when the explosion rocked the factor, the pond became infected with radioactive materials from the plant itself, as well as radioactive dust that rained down from the sky. This was a no-go zone for some time, until 2014, when they intentionally lowered the water levels to remove the radioactive materials they could find. This caused many lakes to form, and the radioactive material that remained helped create a unique ecosystem that caused all sorts of changes to the plants and the fauna. There were even legends of mutant catfish in the pond, but it was just catfish that grew to great sizes because you weren't allowed to catch them. The place has now become a popular tourist attraction and was even the spot of an episode of River Monsters, where the host caught one of the mutant catfish. Number 6. The Red Forest. If you look at the Chernobyl disaster as a whole, and its fallout, you might think that there wasn't a hint of luck in what went down. But you would be wrong, because the people of Ukraine were fortunate that a forest surrounded the plant in nearby areas. Because when the nuclear fire and dust started to spread, the trees were what absorbed the radiation, and through this, the Red Forest was born. It's called that because the once very green pine trees absorbed the radiation in such amounts that the needles and leaves were turned brownish red. And if you were to look at the forest from above, you can see very clearly the divide between the trees that absorbed the radiation and the ones that didn't. The forest has been mostly restored, but it's still held as one of the most contaminated sites in the world today. Number 5. Duga Radar Station. During the days of the Soviet Union, the nation of Russia was bent on construction in various ways, including building things that would help them keep their nation safe from potential threats, as well as detecting what others might be playing for them. Thus, in the Ukraine, they made the Duga Radar Station, which was meant to be a missile defense early warning system. To be clear, not only was the station functional, it had a lot of power going through it, to the extent that it earned the name the Russian Woodpecker, because randomly, it would put out loud blasts of sound across radio stations in a fast format. Not unlike a woodpecker blasting its beak against a tree. Regardless of its quirks, the site was functional and was even used to detect a missile launch from another country. So why does it stand abandoned? Simple, it was too close to Chernobyl. Because of it being in the Chernobyl exclusion zone, the place cannot be occupied. All that work, now abandoned. Number 4. Radioactive Machines Graveyard. Pop quiz. What was one of the most important things in the cleanup of the Chernobyl plants? That would be the machines. Because to ensure not just the safety of the workers, but to make sure that things got done as quickly as possible, all sorts of machines were brought in to try and make things better, or at the very least, less contaminated. The problem though was that the radiation levels were so high that all the machines that were used had to be either continually cleaned or abandoned to ensure safety. A nearby evacuated village eventually became the resting place for these contaminated vehicles. And we're not just talking things like trucks or cars. We're talking bulldozers, helicopters, special custom-made items to help with the cleanup, and so on and so forth. Many dozens of acres were used to house these machines after their work was done. And for many years, they just sat there. Row upon row of machine resting and rotting and rusting. Eventually, some of the machines that were still highly radioactive were removed and put at another location, while others were scrapped for parts. But many still remain there today. Number 3. The Volkov Air Defense Missile System. At first, you might think it odd that there was a missile system near a nuclear power plant. But remember, these things are perfect targets for terrorist attacks or for strikes from enemy nations that want to do massive damage. Look what an accidental meltdown did to Ukraine and its surrounding areas. And now imagine if a missile hit the place and caused it to go boom in the worst way possible. As such, a secret military base was put there to protect it, as well as the radio station we talked about earlier. There isn't too much information about the place as it's within the exclusion zone and thus people can't just go to it. However, we do know that everything that was built to house the missile system and the soldiers that were put there to use it is still there. As such, it's a stark reminder how you can protect things from external threats, but can't always protect from internal ones. Number 2. Medical Sanitary Unit, number 126 in Pripyat. When it comes to emergency situations in Chernobyl, the first thing you have to do is set up a place for people to go to get first treatment. The Medical Sanitary Unit number 126 within the town of Pripyat was just that for Chernobyl. It was very much the first stop in a long and dangerous path to recovery for those who were immediately exposed to the radiation. But there's a lot more insanity here than you might think. Because below the main facility is a basement where the medical personnel went and dropped off the clothes and items that were on the people who came into the facility. It's so dangerous in that basement that a single boot of a firefighter was registered as having over 1,000 times the radiation needed to kill someone. And yet, people find a way to get in there to check it out themselves. Number 1. The elephant's foot. Many people were not prepared for the fallout when it came to trying to clean up the events of Chernobyl, including the infamous object known simply as the elephant's foot. This was and is a literal mass of molten material that is oozing out radiation. The elephant's foot is composed primarily of silicon dioxide, with traces of uranium, titanium, zirconium, magnesium, and graphite. When this was found within Chernobyl, it was giving off readings of 8 to 10,000 Roentgens per hour. In context, if you were to get close to that mass and stand there for a minute, you would have a painful death over time. If you continued to stand there for over 10 minutes, you would die within days. The elephant's foot remains to this day, and few dare to approach it without the most heavy of protective outfits because of what it still exudes in terms of radiation. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at Chernobyl and how a lot of what is within it is absolutely insane? Do you think you'd want to go and see parts of Chernobyl yourself? What do you feel is going to happen to this place as more time passes on? Do you think it can ever be 100% restored and its lands fixed? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.